from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy Monday to you. We've got the Iowa caucuses, and it looks like Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito, the 45th president of the United States, has blown this thing out. Multiple networks are projecting that Donald J. Trump has won the Iowa caucuses. It's uncertain how many delegates he's going to wrap up here, but it seems that he's in the lead pretty much everywhere. There was some early speculation that Trump might not outperform Nikki Haley in some of the suburban counties in Iowa. As I'm looking at some reports coming in, looks like that was also miscalculated or misprojected, however you want to phrase it. And Trump is now beating Nikki Haley in those counties that they thought that she would carry. Either way, he's the projected winner by multiple networks thus far. I think Fox News has called it for him. Newsmax has called it for him. And he made some comments to Fox News. We'll get into that in a little bit. It's also Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think today is the 95th anniversary of his birth. And that's a pretty big deal. And not just, the fact that we're celebrating his birthday for the 95th time, but moreover, what King meant to America, the impact that he had on America and so many lives in so many ways. So I'll be getting into that as well. There's a couple of things I want to read about that I think you'll appreciate sharing. And I'm pretty sure there's some other news there, but those are the two big stories that are on my radar. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I know I did. And interesting way to start the day. If you were off today for MLK Day, good for you. If you were not off, good for you. You're earning some cash doing what you do. But there's a piece by somebody we've had on as a guest, and we should probably bring him back on. He wrote a book called The Devil and Karl Marx. His name is Paul Kengor, and a really good piece that he wrote about the left and their hatred of MLK. But last year, one of the guests I had on for Martin Luther King Jr. Day was Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece, Dr. Alveda King. And she came on with us, and I thought we had an excellent conversation. If you ever want to check it out, visit our website, richvaldezamericaatnight.com. But she wrote an op-ed, and I want to share a little bit about it because I think it's a good place to start this evening before we jump into the politics and then into the culture and everything else that we're going to talk about tonight. But she wrote this piece. The title of it is MLK's Dream for 2024. Focus on the gospel, not on politics. And that's Reverend Dr. Alveda King. And it goes like this. New Year 2024 begins with the observance of the annual Martin Luther King holiday. Let freedom ring, followed quickly by the annual March for Life. I believe if my uncle were here, he would remind us to learn to live together as brothers and sisters and not perish together as fools. As to the March for Life, I'm reminded of my uncle Martin Luther's words in his last Christmas sermon, saying, quote, when we value the human personality, we won't kill anybody. Human life and dignity matter, from the womb to the tomb and beyond. The greatest gift that my parents and grandparents passed down to me is a legacy of faith, hope, love, and forgiveness, connected to our family history that's marked by a commitment to service and compassion. While I would love to leave my children and grandchildren a financial legacy of untold riches, I know the most important gift that I can share with them is a true understanding of acceptance of God's will for their lives. One thing that's both tangible and intangible is that all gifts come with return tags. For instance, the week after a baby shower or Christmas, stores are bombarded with people participating in the long practice ritual of returning gifts that they don't want. Today, many of us whose families passed on greater gifts of legacies of morality and dignity are trading them in for beliefs that are counter to everything we were taught. I know deep within my soul that my parents and grandparents would be appalled if I traded their lessons of morality and dignity and swapped them for depraved, quote-unquote, gifts of honors that belong to the world. And then she includes a Bible verse, Matthew 6:31. And she goes on and wraps up saying, while 2024 will likely be turbulent and even frightening in some ways, fear not, repent, forgive, and look for open doors and windows of opportunity, even in the midst of storms. Continue to pray for those in authority. Vote responsibly and pray for God's grace, mercy, and righteousness to prevail throughout the year, everywhere. Happy New Year, friends. In the words of my grandfather, the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr., thank God for what we have left. God bless you in the days ahead. And that is an op-ed by the Reverend Dr. Alveda King. She's chair of America First Policy Institute Center for the American Dream, and she's the daughter of A.D. King, the brother of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And I thought those were inspirational words from someone from the King family that we should never lose sight of. And I'll get a little bit more into this in the next hour because I think that's important. But I want to get into the news of the day because right now we've got President Trump, who's going to be taking the stage sometime soon. And if we can get the live feed, we will plug into that so you can hear his victory speech. And I guess he's probably waiting for the others to give concession speeches, which they may not give since it's only a caucus. And I don't know if he's really going to wait for them to do it, but I think that's the custom is for them to say, you know, came in second or we came in third and we're looking forward to whatever. And I think another big upset from tonight is that Nikki Haley, who was expected to, by some, to win and by others to come in right behind Trump, came in third. And DeSantis came in second. And I know they had a hard-fought back and forth with all of their trading of barbs, if you will, in various debates that they had. So I thought that was interesting because I thought Governor DeSantis was going to come in third place as well. And I think this goes to show you that conservatism's alive and well, at least in Iowa, right? It's definitely not for the rhino-hearted, if you will, right? I think Nikki Haley's message, again, I think she's a fine woman. I think she's a very nice person. I've enjoyed my conversations with her, limited conversations, but I've enjoyed them nonetheless. But I think people are really looking for common sense conservative solutions and unabashed leadership, people who aren't afraid to call woke, people who aren't afraid to lift their friendship finger in the face of the establishment. And I think they proved that tonight, at least thus far, with, I think it was before 2% of the votes were counted, they were already calling this thing for Donald Trump because of how many votes had come in, because the Trump voters showed up very early. So kudos to them who braved the cold and made it out there. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the Iowa caucuses. Scheduled to join us is a friend of the program and the pollster for the Trump campaign, John McLaughlin. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
One, this is the people's victory. Despite every media, despite every lawsuit, despite every effort to destroy Trump, the people of Iowa have stood up and said, no, he is our candidate. Number two, he's the nominee. Get over it. He is the nominee. He's going to win the nomination. The news media doesn't want to say that because they need to somehow hype. Please watch us while we go through this charade. There is no candidacy for number two. There is no number two. There are irrelevancies. You get to be the leading irrelevant or the second irrelevant or the third irrelevant, but nobody's going to be number two because he's going to dominate totally if you look at the country at large, where he's at like 62 or 64% approval.
That is former House Speaker Newt Gingrich giving some commentary on the Fox News channel, saying that he is the nominee. And this is, of course, in reference to Donald J. Trump, El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente. He has, seems like he's handily won in a blowout the Iowa caucuses. It, from what I see, looks like he's really, really come in big. It's a historic win. And I want to get to the bottom of that with Trump pollster John McLaughlin, who's with us. John McLaughlin, welcome back, sir.
Great to be back, Rich.
Thank you. I want to get into this. Now, I fully expected a victory in Iowa. I think Trump is doing extraordinarily well, better than he's done in the past, from what I can see, without looking at any numbers like you do. But I also thought that Nikki Haley would come in second place, and it seems like DeSantis is coming in second place. At least that's how it's shaping up thus far. What's your initial reaction to the Trump victory that's projected in Iowa?
I mean, it's a historic victory. It's a blowout. I mean, when you look at past records in Iowa caucuses over the years, because these are a different kind of. This is not really a primary. This is a caucus where the voters get to know the candidates and turn out for them, et cetera. And in the record was in 1988, Dole won the caucuses by 12%, and then in 2000, George W. Bush won by 11%, went on to win the presidency. And this is well beyond that. And this is where you have a candidate. It's ironic. It's Martin Luther King's birthday, right, the holiday, where years ago, Democrats who were segregationists wanted to put the guy in jail. And today you got Joe Biden, who was friends with a lot of those guys like Robert Byrd, who's trying to put his leading political opponent, Donald Trump, in jail. So this is, a resounding win. But what's new about it is people see it for what it is. In our last national poll in December, 69% of all voters said those indictments are politics, and 58% said Biden played a role. And, we're winning nationally, and we're winning all the national polls, and we're winning the battleground states because Biden's a failed president. Inflation's out of control. The border's out of control. They're kicking kids out of schools in New York City to house migrants because they don't have any place to put them. But they're still keeping an open border. Crime's out of control in a lot of cities. And the world's on fire in terms of Biden's got wars in Ukraine and the Middle East and Israel that wouldn't have happened if Trump was president. And, tonight was the first step in a historic win for Donald Trump in basically beating Joe Biden. And that's why it's 20 below in Iowa. It's single digits. The wind chill is 20 below. And these voters came out in spite of that to give Donald Trump a historic win because ultimately they know Donald Trump will beat Joe Biden. And Joe Biden knows that, which is why he's, doing the legal persecution is outrageous. And when you look at, just this Soros prosecutor in Fulton County who was coordinating with the Biden prosecutors, and she had a boyfriend on the payroll, and the guy's married, and it's like it's just
fancy trips on the public dime.
I have European clients in democracies in Eastern Europe that said this is what the communists did in 1947, where they tried to put their opponents in jail, and this is something Vladimir Putin would do, and Joe Biden is corrupt, and he wants to rig all the rules so that there was no Democrat caucus in Iowa tonight. There's no Joe Biden's ballot. And 8 days from now, Joe Biden's name is not on the Democrat primary in New Hampshire because he's afraid of losing. And the first time it'll be in South Carolina. So so right now Nikki Haley's being held aloft in the polls where she's still losing to us, and she's losing to us by double digits in New Hampshire. But she's still being held aloft in the polls because independents can vote in the primaries in New Hampshire. And the 44% who are independents, there's super PACs that are being funded by Biden donors trying to get Biden voters who are independents to vote in the Republican primary against Donald Trump. And that, and when Republicans see that for what it is, the independents who want to get rid of Joe Biden, the Republicans who certainly want to get rid of Joe Biden, will beat Nikki Haley. But it's going to be hard fought because they're spending not just millions, they're spending tens of millions of dollars in these small states. So it's a big deal. So we've got 8 days to beat Nikki Haley in New Hampshire. Ron DeSantis probably should, even though he's in second place, it's such a distant second place, he probably should think about, going back to Florida and being a good governor and thinking about the future in 2028 and endorse Donald Trump, just like Marco Rubio's endorsed Donald Trump, and Tim Scott's now talking to President Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina. Nikki Homestay is talking about endorsing Donald Trump because Trump's ahead in South Carolina 2-1, in spite of the fact that, Charles Koch's American for Prosperity that supports the amnesty and free trade with China is spending millions of dollars already in TV ads in South Carolina and dropping mail in the early states. So, these D.C. establishment oligarchs and the Biden supporters that are funding this to the tune of tens of millions of dollars need to stop, realize that Donald Trump's going to be the nominee, and let us have a general election debate with Joe Biden and get on with the business of the country in terms of trying to fix the things that are wrong with the country.
Now, John McLaughlin, I want to get down to brass tacks here because you mentioned something, and I think you glossed over it, and I think it's worthy of delving in a little bit. You said that, I don't know, was it 1970 or 1980, whatever year it was, where Bob Dole got 12%, and nobody else has won Iowa with larger than 12%. Is that right?
No one won by more than 12%. It was 1988 for Bob Dole.
88.
And 1988. He beat George H.W. Bush, who went on to win the nomination. And, that was the record, 12%.
Now, the numbers I'm looking at say something like 51%.
Yeah, 51 to 21 is the current numbers. And they're projecting, the New York Times is projecting 51 to 20. So
that's crazy.
So we'll see. Yeah. Well,
and the disparity, that's 30 points, right? 29 points.
Yeah.
This is a massive blowout, historic victory. I'm wondering if the news media is going to hone in on that and really talk about how how this is actually happening. And I know that there's some reaction. I saw a little bit of the folks on MSNBC and the scowls on their face. It reminded me of election night in 2016, which was very gratifying for me personally. But seeing some of their faces, Maddow and the rest of them, it was just really interesting. Like, they were like, oh, my God, this is really happening. And I thought it was just so funny. And it underscores to me how much of a disparity there is between, the left and the right. And I think the people in the middle really see all of it happening. And they're slowly but surely gravitating rightward because they realize the left is a sinking ship, and Trump seems to make the most sense. What do you think?
I agree with you in that the left has gone so far left that they're on this progressive Marxist fringe that Trump is winning Hispanic voters 47-40. He's winning 26%.
Well, I want you to give me that breakdown on the other side of this break. Folks, we're on with John McLaughlin, and we're going to talk about how Trump did with African-American voters. It seems like Biden's down. Last numbers I saw, I think he was down 21% with black voters. Folks, don't go anywhere. Trump pollster John McLaughlin is with us discussing the historic victory of Donald J. Trump in Iowa in the Iowa caucuses. I'm Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, familia. Welcome back, amigos. We continue our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses tonight for the 2024 presidential primary election with the caucuses tonight in Iowa. The weather was brutal. Talking about, from what I'm hearing from John McLaughlin, Trump's pollster, they're talking about 20 below in Iowa tonight. I know it was cold, and I'm looking at an article here. Trump, DeSantis, and Haley all leading Biden in a new poll from CBS YouGov. John McLaughlin is our guest. He's the head of McLaughlin Associates, one of the top polling firms in the country. Remarkably accurate, and he's working with the Trump team. He's with us tonight. Congratulations on your big victory tonight, John McLaughlin. Let's talk about this historic blowout election where Trump is coming in 29 or 30 points ahead of anybody else at 51% is being projected by the New York Times. And according to a conversation we had in the last segment, the last person to win this with the highest number was 12% back in 1988 with Bob Dole. So truly a historic victory for President Trump in this reelection campaign. Let's talk about this poll. CBS YouGov. They find that former President Trump and even the rest of the crew, they're all beating Biden in a head-to-head matchup. What's your thought?
Have you read that entire poll, all the questions?
No, I'm looking at the first question right here, and it's interesting, though. It's got Trump beating everybody here.
Yeah, well, Trump's beating everybody in it, but it's different than the other polls because the other recent polls, like Rasmussen last week, had Trump beating Biden by 8 points, but they had Nikki Haley losing by 2. The difference in this poll is if you go to question 34 of their questionnaire, if Donald Trump wins in 24, do you think his policies in a second term will try to put the interests of white people over racial minorities or racial minorities over white people? You then get a question on 36. If he wins the presidency, do you think he'll leave NATO? If Trump wins the presidency, do you want him to try to punish or shut down media companies or news organizations that criticize him? And then there's a question, if Donald Trump wins the presidency, do you want him to get revenge against his political opponents by investigating and bringing criminal charges against his political opponents? And if Trump wins the presidency, which should be his general approach to the workers and employees of federal bureaus and agencies, remove them or keep the employees? It's basically a push poll against Trump. That if there were no negative questions about DeSantis, no negative questions about Haley, no real negative questions about Biden. And if they have that at the end, some Trump voters will drop off. So the media bias is just starting in these polls again because the reason they want to show this is that they wanted to manufacture a result where Haley's better than Trump because since December 14th, Trump is winning in the Harvard-Harris poll and Haley's losing by 2. They have a Yahoo News poll, Trump is winning, and at the end of December, and Nikki Haley's losing by 3. They have a YouGov Economist poll that Trump is even with Biden, which means an electoral win, but Haley's down 5. And then you have the Rasmussen poll last week where Rasmussen reports Trump's up 8 and Nikki Haley's losing by 2. Nikki Haley's whole premise of her campaign was she could win and Trump couldn't. Well, you know what? It's not true. And if the media continues to manufacture fake polls like this, they're just going to anger Republicans, and we're going to trounce her in every primary that we can.
You know what's interesting, John McLaughlin, is that even though it's a manufactured poll, it's incredibly biased with the questions that you pointed out. It still has Trump winning, which is remarkable to me. They're trying to get him, and they can't. Now, I want to circle back to something you said, because you mentioned that first question, number 36, the way it's said about racial minorities. And in the last segment, we left off talking about how Trump is gaining with ethnic minorities like Hispanics, African Americans, and we're seeing Biden losing ground there. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, our national poll at the end of right before Christmas, we had our last national poll was the end of December, and we've been saying that the Obama coalition for Joe Biden is being busted up. And in that poll, Trump was getting 26% of the black vote, which is amazing because we got 8 the first time in 16. We got 12 in 2020. 26 is the end of the Democrat Party. And we're winning Hispanics 47-40, and we improved from 28 to 34 in 2020. So winning the Hispanic vote would be huge. And we're doing better we're winning with young voters. We're gaining with the suburban independent women, and we're winning independents. So Joe Biden's losing to us in our last national poll, 47-44. He's losing in the Real Clear Politics average of media polls. He's losing in all the battleground state polls that have come out recently. So, so you've got a president who's a failed president with policies not working because inflation, they tell you it's going down, but the prices haven't gone back to where they were when Donald Trump was president. Right. Under Trump, you had a growing economy with no inflation. And you had a world that was not really safe, but there was no wars like we saw. He'd beaten ISIS. Russia wouldn't go into Ukraine for the 4 years Trump was president. Iran was going broke and being held at bay. Now you got wars, in the Middle East. Iran's going crazy. They're shooting at with their surrogates at our ships at will. You've got Putin well into Ukraine and grinding it out, and Biden can't stop him. And you've got, an open border, and God knows who's coming into the country. You've got crime is up in the cities, and it's not going back down to where it was before COVID. And Joe Biden is a failing president. And, the voters are angry, but they're channeling that anger into voting for Donald Trump, and we're ahead in the polls. And, it's such that we're so far ahead that Joe Biden's indicted us 4 times, and he's got the Attorney General in New York trying to confiscate Trump's wealth. You've got his people trying to knock us off the ballot with unconstitutional challenges. And now they're funding Nikki Haley's campaign, guys like Reid Hoffman, who owns LinkedIn and who are known Biden donors, and super PACs being funded by Biden donors to try to stop Trump in New Hampshire. And we're intent on beating them. We have 8 days to beat them in New Hampshire, and then, if they want to stay in longer, we'll beat Nikki Haley in South Carolina, and we'll win Super Tuesday, and we'll close this out. So we'll have the nomination. We'll take it to Joe Biden.
John McLaughlin, I hear what you're saying, and I think you're right on track. And when you were talking about the minority voters and potentially if they lose more of the African-American vote, how it's the ultimate demise of the Democrat Party, because that's the majority of their base. Or at least a big stronghold in their base. And something that I thought was interesting was a couple of weeks back, we were both on Newsmax, and there was a clip of audio that they played of a man on the street interview, and I've played it before on this program, where they're just basically asking people in the Bronx, New York, who do you think? What do you think? What's going on, right? And every last person that they speak with, random people, black people, Hispanic people, are telling them Biden's the worst. Bring back Trump. We need Trump. I'm spending so much money on my groceries. Right? It was just really, really quite eye-opening. I'd not seen something like this in recent years. Right? I can't remember the last time I seen something like that. But it was remarkable to me to see that, and it seems like the polls are now catching up to what we're seeing anecdotally on the streets.
Yep. And by the way, you're from the Bronx, right?
My dad is from the Bronx. My mom's from Brooklyn.
Oh, Jesus, you're getting upper scale.
The best of both worlds, huh?
I went to grammar school in the Bronx. Then went back there to college. So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, those of us who I live near New York City, and I go into the Bronx all the time, see friends and relatives. And when my sons were growing up, we went and played city leagues in there. And where they were interviewing those people, where Cara Castronova was interviewing those people on Fordham Road, I mean, those are real people, and they really mean it. And you could go outside Yankee Stadium, you could go down to Roberto Clemente State Park, and you'll get these Hispanic and African-American voters who've just had it because, the crime, they don't want crime in their neighborhoods, and they want school choice. Their kids during COVID were not in the schools, and there's no school choice in New York because they're afraid they'll send their kids to Catholic school. So, the teachers union doesn't like that. But, those voters have had it. And Donald Trump's a way that they can cast a protest vote and really register for change. And, Trump did better in the South Bronx in 2020 than he did in 2016. And it's typical of what's going on in cities around the country where, voters have been taken for granted by the Democrat Party and are suffering. They've had it because what used to be $200 to go get your weekly groceries for the kids is now $400. That's a lot of money for working families. So
when you double your cost on food, You're losing money somewhere else, right? It's not like you're getting paid double by your boss because you're paying double for food. Now, let me ask you, John McLaughlin, pollster to President Trump, head of McLaughlin Associates, what is the likelihood of this New York Post article that came out shortly after this report that we were talking about, saying that there may be a rally for Trump in the Bronx?
That they're definitely seriously looking into it. I mean, it's absolutely true, and where they actually have it, and whether we rent Yankee Stadium or not, that's up for grabs right now. But the campaign is seriously looking at it, and Donald Trump himself, he saw a Siena poll where, New Yorkers are seeing Letitia James, the Attorney General, trying to confiscate his wealth, and he paid all the loans back. The banks made money. He's a successful businessman, and people look at her, and she's a hack, and she's a corrupt hack. And crime is out of control in New York, and she's doing nothing about it. So Trump in a Siena poll was in single digits of Biden. So, Trump's looking at it, let's put New York State in play. Let's win the suburbs. Let's win upstate, and let's take a lot of votes in New York City. Because Lee Zeldin got 30% of the vote in New York City. If he'd gotten 33, Zeldin would have been governor. So Trump's not far from that, and so they're serious because he'll do that. He'll do that just like Ronald Reagan did it back the last time a Republican won in New York was Reagan in '84. He'll do that, and we'll put New York in play, and Joe Biden will have to spend time and resources coming to New York.
Good. Now, John McLaughlin, I have one more question for you, but we're out of time in this segment. Can you stick around for a segment, or do you got to get back to doing what you're doing?
I'm in the office counting numbers, so I'll wait.
All right. So we're going to put you on hold. You get to hear the commercials for a second. We'll come back, and I want to get your take on how things are going to break down in New Hampshire and then subsequently in South Carolina. Folks, we're on with John McLaughlin, pollster to President Trump, talking about the historic blowout victory in the Iowa caucuses tonight. And we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Oh, my liberty-loving Latino.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez, we're bringing you some live coverage and reaction and analysis of the historic win of the Iowa caucuses. Our guest is the pollster for the Trump campaign, John McLaughlin. And, John, I have one question for you, but before I get to that, somebody has a call. We've got Marcel from WFAS in New York. He's listening live, and he had a question. Let's go to Marcel real quick. Marcel, you're on with John McLaughlin and Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Good evening, John and Rich. Good to see you. Happy New Year, both.
Thank you.
This is from The Hill, and shows that ABC and Ipsos, only 1/3 of our adults here in our country said they approve of President Biden's job performance, but a record low for his presidency and for any president in the last 15 years conducted by January 4th through the 8th. Only 33% of those surveyed, they have approved of Biden, a drop from the previous poll in September of last year, while 37% of Americans approve of his performance. His disapproval rating is going to be not 56 up, but 58% in September. This is going to be exactly what they did. 37% last year approved. 33% January of this year approved. 56% disapproved, but 58% same thing. Also,
thank you, Marcel. We can't get into all of those details, but I get the point. Biden's not doing great here. John McLaughlin, what say you?
President Trump over a year ago, we were in a close race where in January we're in a multi-candidate field. We were 42, DeSantis was 31, everybody else single digits, and Trump was beating DeSantis 52-40. But we didn't want to run to beat DeSantis. We wanted to run to beat Biden. And
it's interesting,
Donald
though, today's numbers are 51-20.
Against Biden?
No, against DeSantis.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the Iowa caucus, and nationally we're over 60%, where DeSantis is like 12 or 11. But so it's going to get worse for them as they go forward. But but what your caller was getting into is Donald Trump wants to beat Joe Biden, and Donald Trump. I was fortunate to have done a poll for him and meet with him in February of 2021. And it wasn't a pleasant time because impeachment was going on. But 2/3 of the Republican voters wanted Trump to run again. And there was an apprehension about Biden's policies, that Biden's policies would fail. And I told President Trump, I said, this is a lot like Reagan in 76, where in 76, Reagan didn't win the nomination, it was close. But there was a lot of buyer's remorse that he wasn't our nominee. And after 4 years of failure with Jimmy Carter, Reagan won in a landslide. Well, I said to him, just, take a look at Biden's policies, and as they fail, and he gets rid of your policies and tries to, take us in a different direction, he's going to fail. And when he fails, there'll be buyer's remorse that the voters want you back. And President Trump took that strategy to heart, and because that's what's bothering him is that as Biden repeals Trump's policies and weakens the economy and weakens the national defense and opens the borders, he's taking our country in a bad direction. And, so that's why he's running again, to put us back in the right place. He loves the country, he loves Americans, and he wants us to be strong and secure again. So now you're seeing all these polls where he's beating Joe Biden, and Joe Biden has failed. So.
How does it look for New Hampshire?
New Hampshire right now, if you look at the polls on the Real Clear Politics website, Trump's leading by 10 to 15 points. There's a lot of it. That primary is different because Iowa, you have to be a Republican to show up at the caucus. In New Hampshire, 44% of all voters are independents, and 28% are independent or Democrats, 28% are Republicans. If you're a Republican, you have to vote in the Republican primary. If you're an independent, you can choose a Democrat or a Republican ballot. The Biden people are pushing, not Democrats, but independents who like Biden and who are behavioral Democrats to pick Republican ballots and come in and vote for Haley because they know they can beat Nikki Haley. So a lot of chicanery. So they're trying to invade and hijack our primary. But on the other hand, among Republicans, Donald Trump's winning 2-1, 3-1 against Haley. He's trailing among the independents because of that shift. He's trailing by 10 points. And, but that 10 points, that means so on the Real Clear Politics average, in New Hampshire, we're down I'm not down. We're up by 44 to 29. And Christie's now dropped out. So
those votes are going to go somewhere. John, we're going to have to leave it there because I'm out of time on my end. Let everybody know how they could check out the work that you're doing for the president and the rest of the surveys you do.
Well, a lot of it's not published, but you could go to our website at McLaughlinOnline.com. We do publish a monthly survey. And you could also follow me on Twitter, on X, on at JMCLGHLN. And it's the same on True Social. Okay?
Outstanding. John McLaughlin, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Congrats on the big win tonight. Tell the boss we congratulate him, and look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Oh, the boss won it. We just take polls. Thank you.
Sounds good, brother.
There, your listeners, as long as they keep voting, we can turn things around. That's the key thing. Americans want to do the right thing. So,
amen. Thank you. John McLaughlin, everybody, head of McLaughlin Associates. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. President Trump has taken the microphone, and he's now addressing the crowd.
So tall, we only ate her food. And I want to thank my family. Generally, they've worked so hard, and they've taken so much abuse for being
We'll
good
go
people.
to more on President Trump when we return. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Monday evening. If you want to join the conversation, the phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We're celebrating the life and legacy of the Reverend MLK. And it's also the Iowa caucuses, and there was a historic victory by President Trump. I think back in 1988, the highest percentage gained was by Bob Dole, as part of the conversation we just had in the first hour of the program. And today that was blown away with 51% by Donald Trump, who I call Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito, El Presidente, the 45th president of the United States. And President Trump has taken to the microphone. He is giving some words of thanks to his friends and his family. We're going to check in with him right now.
What a turnout, what a crowd. And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. It's practically never been like this. It's just so important, and I want to make that a very big part of our message. We're going to come together. It's going to happen soon, too. It's going to happen soon. I want to thank some of the great people. We have so many senators. If I go through every name, we'll be here all night, and everybody's going to get angry at me. But the senators, the congressmen from Washington, they came down from all different states. I want to thank you very much. I want to congratulate Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. We're all having a good time together. And I think they both actually did very well. I really do. I think they both did very well. We don't even know what the outcome of second place is. And I see Carrie Lake. Congratulations, Carrie. I spotted her, I have to announce, because she's terrific. She's going to be a senator, a great senator, I predict, right? Going to be a great senator. And I also want to congratulate Vivek, because he did a hell of a job. He came from zero, and he's got a big percent, probably 8%, almost 8%, and that's an amazing job. They all did. They're all very smart.
There we have President Trump thanking his rival candidates, doing it both, I think, in a nice way. He's very classy about it. It's also a little bit funny, thanking his family. He's there flanked by his family and the First Lady. And kudos to the Trump team on a big victory, big win tonight, historic win. And he talked about bringing the country together. And I thought that was interesting because there's so much division in the rhetoric that we hear all over the place. And I was looking at a piece earlier in the American Spectator, and it's titled, "The Martin Luther King Jr. That Liberals Hate." Subtitle, "King believed a religious person must disobey unjust laws. The left just wants them punished." And it's by Professor Paul Kengor. And he goes into a few things, saying the date was September 1st, 2015, a Tuesday. It was an unusual day at the Rowan County Courthouse in Kentucky, where County Clerk Kim Davis arrived shortly before 7 a.m. Awaiting the clerk were dozens of reporters and a few lawyers. The media was hoping for fireworks. And, of course, they're talking about this case where the Kim Davis came under fire for her own religious liberty, right? And as soon as the office opened, two women, April Miller and Karen Roberts, both friends of Davis, who were in the process of suing Davis, led the way to the counter to ask for a marriage license. Also present were two men, David Moore and some other guy, blah, yada, 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 right? And it goes on. The whole thing was surreal, unimaginable. she had refused to give same-sex marriage certificates. Obviously, a Judeo-Christian tradition. For Christians like Kim Davis, it contravened the scriptural teaching about marriage being about between a man and a woman who leave their parents and become one flesh. Back when I was in church, it said cleave to become one flesh. Leave and cleave. Anyway, the very words of Jesus Christ invoking the book of Genesis, reference Genesis 2:24. And ultimately, this became a long, drawn-out battle that went to the Supreme Court, the federal government versus the Supreme Court's 5-4 ruling, and the 5-4 ruling, and that's declared null and void 50 state marriage laws in one fell swoop. The High Court's liberal justices, led by a swing vote, Justice Anthony Kennedy, and there we have it. And I bring that up because Trump is talking about unifying the nation. Ken Gore is talking about the legacy of Martin Luther King and how he was talking about the same thing, right? Unity, content of character, not the color of one's skin. But today, we seem to have a party that's focused on trying to bring the country together and do the right thing, and another party that's trying to divide everybody into groups. And I couldn't help but think of a viral video, I think it was last year, that a pastor showed up at a school board meeting, and he really just laid the smackdown on this school board because of the pornographic material that was in the books, because of so much. And recently, I was at a dinner, a Turning Point USA dinner in Palm Beach at Trump's place, Mar-a-Lago. And I didn't get to meet the pastor, but I know he was there because they shouted him out. And I remembered that story, and I thought, we got to get him on the show because I want to talk about, that story and his thoughts on things. And he's got a brand new book called Eraced. And I'm talking about no one other than Pastor John Amanchukwu. He's a staff pastor at the Upper Room Church of God in Christ. And he's been very critical, right? Very critical of critical race theory and abortion and things of that nature. And I want to have a conversation with him about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and how so many on the left, in the name of racial equity, in the name of racial justice, are undoing the progress made by MLK. Pastor John Amanchukwu, welcome to the program, sir.
Rich, thank you so much for sharing your vast platform with little old me.
Oh, it's my honor. It's my pleasure. Thank you, sir. And I really congratulations to you on everything that you're doing. You're a voice that's needed, in my opinion, and we need a lot more like you. So let's dig in. I mean, obviously today is Martin Luther King Day. I think it's the 95th anniversary of his birthday, and I think about being a kid. I'm 45 years old, and I remember being a kid and being taught of what a hero Martin Luther King was, right? Dressed in red, white, and blue every Friday in a public school in Brooklyn, New York. I would go and we'd pledge allegiance to the flag. We'd learn about Martin Luther King and what a hero he was, how he changed the landscape of racial equality in America. And here I am today with my children. They're 18 and 22 now. And I think about, thank God they know the truth. But I wonder if they were just a little bit younger, they might not know the truth. They might be stuck with these books. They might still be in public school. And there's so many kids that are facing that, and that's going to be their reality when they grow up, but for concerned parents that show up at school board meetings, but for folks like yourself that care enough to go and tell the truth, right? And I think it's so important, but I know it doesn't happen as often as it should. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I feel like King's legacy is being undone, and I don't know what we can do to stop it.
Well, the thing that we can do to stop it is the thing that many pastors have failed to do, and that's speak truth, regardless of the pushback, regardless of potentially losing members in your congregation, regardless of being castigated and bludgeoned by your congregation. Pastors, first and foremost, must preach truth. I have a saying where I believe that many black pastors have relinquished the cross, but they hold on to the donkey.
Oh, snap.
And the problem is we have too much donkey preaching, too much liberal preaching. The Bible is more current than tomorrow's newspaper. It answers every question for society. You know, it was also once said that truth is treason in an empire of lies. And so when you preach, teach, discuss, or talk about the uncomfortable truths of society, people are not going to be pleased with you. I agree with President Trump, and I'm happy. I am very happy that he won tonight. I believe we need to unite America. But uniting America is not diversity, equity, and inclusion. Uniting America is not support for BLM. Uniting America is not critical race theory, labeling whites as inherently racist and painting blacks as victims. That's not where unity comes from. Unity comes from, first and foremost, from the scriptures and understanding how God, according to Acts 16:26, it says, and hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. And then Galatians 3:28, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. We must talk about oneness and uniting America under one banner. I support President Trump because he has a America First platform. He doesn't have a globalist agenda. He has a America First platform, a structure that's bettering our country with the attempt to secure our borders and to secure our freedoms in our country, to keep fentanyl from coming over the border into our country, to provide school choice, to keep the nuclear family intact, to reduce inflation and unnecessary spending. These are the things that are necessary to a healthy society and a healthy economy. And what I've done, Rich, is traveled now to 10 states. I've been to Virginia, North Carolina, New Jersey, California, Nevada, Florida, Louisiana, Colorado, Idaho, and Pennsylvania, speaking out at school board meetings. I am regarded by the left as being the book banning pastor. That's my title by the liberal media, and I wear it with a badge of honor. I have amassed over 300 million views speaking out at school boards around the country. I'm prepared to go to at least 20 school boards this year. Why? Because I believe that our children are under attack. Our children are being lied to. The same thing that happened in Hitler's Germany, where Hitler sought to take up all the books and to reteach Germany, to keep them and to make them subservient to the Fuhrer. The same thing is happening in America. We see the redefining of terms and words. There's a drag queen available at schools around the country to read to our kids. We found ways to make whites feel uncomfortable because of their pigmentation and to celebrate blackness and worship it as a god. These things are turning our country in the wrong direction. And that's not what Dr. King hoped for. He wanted us to be judged by our character and not by the color of our skin.
Amen to that. Folks, we're on with Pastor John Amanchukwu. And if you missed it and the intro to the segment, he's been speaking out at school board meetings, and I caught one of the videos probably about a year ago of him speaking out and dropping so much knowledge and truth on these school board members. They didn't know what to do, right? There was this guy, this tall black man that was just spitting knowledge saying, you're the racist, right? And it was really, really well said. My paraphrase doesn't do it justice. But Pastor John is with us, and we're going to continue with him straight ahead, not only discussing the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, but we're going to talk about these issues that are very important in society today. He talked about how children are under attack, and he talks about that in his book, Erased, Uncovering the Lies of Critical Race Theory and Abortion. I always recommend getting 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away to somebody who could benefit from it. So make sure you check out the book and buy a copy. And we're going to continue our conversation with Pastor John Amanchukwu straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. Rich Valdez with you, and we're having a conversation with Pastor John Amanchukwu. He is a staff pastor at the Upper Room Church of God in Christ. He's the author of a book called Eraced, Uncovering the Lies of Critical Race Theory and Abortion. He's also a contributor with Turning Point USA. And the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King believed that a religious person has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. And I don't know if it's a stretch, but I would say it's an unjust law for school boards to do what they're doing to children today. It's an unjust law for corporations to require people to become racists, right? To become anti-white racists by teaching diversity, equity, inclusion, and other critical race theory based ideas that just don't jibe with reality. And some could say that's a fundamental difference of opinion. I would say that it's just right versus wrong. Pastor John Amanchukwu, welcome back. I want to get your take on what Martin Luther King believed about a religious person having a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. What say you?
I agree with that. You know, Romans 13 lets us know that the powers that be are ordained by God, but we also must practice peaceful, civil disobedience. Rich, I'll be the first to tell you that I've had to do that in several states around the country. In Florida, I went there and spoke at a school board meeting, and while I was speaking, the board chair cut me off, and I kept reading from a pornographic book that was made available to children in the school district, and she cut me off again, and I kept reading, and she said, you know what, that's 3 times, take away his microphone. And so a gentleman walks up and he removes my microphone from me, and I continue to speak, and then she tells the sheriff to come and remove me from the school board meeting. And so I am seeing myself where there are moments where, yes, we abide by the law. You know, I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Right.
I don't support the tactics of BLM and the anarchy that they created in 2020, burning down cities, you know, looting stores and robbing furniture stores and burning down pharmacies. I don't support that. But I do believe that in cases where when I go to a school board meeting and I've been allotted 3 minutes to speak, I should have a right to speak and to share my voice and to speak up for children.
Amen to that. I want you to keep speaking with us. I know you're scheduled for 2 segments, and I'm hoping you can stick around, Pastor John. I got to take a quick pause right here. Folks, we're on with Pastor John Amanchukwu, and hopefully we're coming right back with him if he can be with us. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're wrapping up our conversation with Pastor John Amanchukwu. And Pastor John, there was a woman, her name is Stacy Robustelli. She's a director of something called High Tops. It's a nonprofit that dedicates themselves to going into public schools and teaching about queer theory and gender ideology. And she was on social media over the summer, bragging about how good they're doing, kind of like a pastor bragging at the end of a sermon and an altar call saying, we've won so many souls to Christ. This woman was doing the same thing about people coming out to an LGBTQ identity. Listen to this.
The most critical time to be there is grades 5 through 8 because you want to catch kids when they're starting puberty, because that's the time in which identity formation is central to their lives. However, early intervention is key. So we actually are designing a kindergarten through grade 2 curriculum this summer. And I will tell you, one of the most rewarding experiences, Nikki, we were in a local school system in an elementary school, and we were in grades 3, 4, and 5. And after we were there, 5 students went to the principal's office and came out. So we are really intentionally going into younger and younger grades.
Well, there you have it. Nobody's lying. She's telling the truth. It's exactly what our fear is, and she's confirming it. Pastor John, in the next minute and a half that we have together, let me know. What's your reaction to that?
I call it mental rape, Rich. Some call it grooming, some call it indoctrination, but I call it mental rape because it assaults the soul, it stains the brain, and it robs children of their innocence. What is the benefit of talking about homosexual sex and heterosexual sex, oral sex, and all kinds of lewd sex acts to children grades kindergarten to 12th grade? What is the academic benefit of that? There isn't any. Is that going to help them on the SAT when they take that test? No. Is it going to help them when they take the ACT test? No. Is it going to help American students compete with other nations and countries? No, it's not. The intent is to rob kids of their innocence and to normalize what is called MAPS, minor attracted persons. Okay? We live in a society today where there is a strong push gradually to say that if, since love is love, since we believe that lie, I don't believe that love is love. I believe that God defines the boundaries of what is love. But there are people who believe that since a person loves an individual, they should be able to be with them regardless of their age, which brings in pedophilia. And pedophilia leads to human trafficking. And so for every individual who campaigns in this country, who supports liberal policies that props up pornographic material in our schools, ultimately they are supporting the human trafficking cartel.
Wow. Pastor John, I thank you for those words, hard-cutting, mental rape. I don't think I'd heard that before, and I think it's a really good way to put it because that's really what it is. And if there wasn't an FCC, we could probably put it even stronger. But that's a really safe way to put it. And I thank you for your time. And while you're saying what you were saying, I was thinking to myself, we're talking about the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and I really wonder what Reverend King would say today in a time like this, where we're talking about these things like MAPS, minor attracted persons, that there is even such a thing, and it just shows me how far away from the standard of the beloved community that King spoke so eloquently of, how far we've fallen from that. I want to thank you for being with us tonight. I really appreciate your time, and let everybody know how they could follow you and keep up to speed with everything you're doing.
Yes, I'm leading a national campaign in 2024 this year to go to 20 school board meetings. If you would like to support my efforts, go to eracedbook.com. That's ERACED book.com, and you can follow me on social media at RevWuTruth. That's REVWU Truth. Follow me there on Instagram, on X, and on YouTube. Thank you so much for your support.
You bet it. Folks, make sure you go and you buy a few books and support the cause. Erased, and that's Erased with a C because he's talking about race and racism. Eracedbook.com. Reverend John Amanchukwu, thank you for discussing the dream of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you so much for having me on.
Godspeed. Folks, we're coming right back. More analysis on the Iowa caucus, on these individual campaigns, first, second, third, fourth place, and everything else that's going on. Plus, we continue our discussion on the future of America and the dream of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
As I've said since the beginning, there are two America First candidates in this race. And earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulated him on his victory. And now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency. And I think we're going to do the right thing for this country.
That is Vivek Ramaswamy suspending his campaign for president, coming in fourth place, getting, I think, 8% of the vote, and putting all of his support behind Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States, who is the winner of the Iowa caucuses. Looks like he's going to really sweep this thing. It looks like a blowout so far, and we are unsure of how many delegates he's going to end up with thus far. At the end of it, but thus far, last I saw there were 16. I'm sure there's more by now. And I want to talk about this with somebody who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. He is a radio host I listen to plenty of times, and decided to stop being a radio. Imagine that. Somebody stopping a career in radio, a syndicated show, and saying, you know what, I care about my country so much, I'm going to run for president. And this person was in the race for president, doing what Ramaswamy was doing what Trump is doing, a heavy lift to save this country. That's none other than the author of As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. Larry Elder, Eldorado, Elderske, welcome to the program, sir.
Rich, thank you so much for that introduction. And don't forget, I also stopped my radio career to run for governor of California in 2021, where I got 3.5 million votes.
Yeah, that was huge. I remember that. That was really huge.
Yep.
And I hope that you do that again, honestly. Or I hope you get back on radio. Because it was fun listening to you, even though I think you cut into my time slot a little bit. I used to listen to you around 9 o'clock Eastern time on the Salem affiliate in my area, coming home from doing production work on the Levin Show. And I always really enjoyed your program. But you heard Vivek Ramaswamy. He's bailed out. This is a process you've been through as well. What's your reaction to Vivek Ramaswamy putting his support behind Trump?
Well, Rich, as far as my running again, my reaction is, hey, you first. It's a tough thing to do. It is grueling. You don't get any sleep. You're doing 3 or 4 events a day, and every time you walk into the door, they expect you to be vibrant and energetic because they are. Right. You're on the phone raising money. You're giving an interview, print, radio, TV. It is grueling, which is why most people don't do it. If you have a career like I do, like you do, you put it on hold. You don't make any money unless you're stealing. And that's why most people don't do it. And if you're a conservative, of course, you have the media hating you because only about 3% of the media are registered Republicans. They despise Republicans. And so you'll be treated unfairly. These are all the reasons why most people don't do this. Regarding
Larry Elder, the reason they do that to you is because, as I understand it, I have it on good authority from the LA Times that you are the black face of white supremacy, sir.
That's right. And Rich, don't laugh. I earned that title. I worked hard for it. So, regarding Vivek, I campaigned with all these guys. We did a lot of events together. And when all of us spoke at the same event, 3 people got standing ovations. Donald Trump, Vivek, and Larry Elder. And inevitably, Rich, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I probably would still be in the race. They come up to me and they say, Larry, I really enjoyed your speech. You're very likable. You're charismatic. You talked about the epidemic of fatherlessness, which clearly is a major issue. You talked about how the Democrats use this business about race to put Republicans on the defense, and that we should be much more aggressive in refuting the narrative that America is systemically racist. You talked about the acute need for school choice in urban America. You talked about a need for an amendment to the Constitution so that spending is set at a percentage of our GDP. All these things are wonderful, Larry, but I'm going to vote for Trump because Trump did it. He did it before. He can do it again. Great speech, but I'm going to vote for Trump. So I knew that Trump was the guy. Iowans love this guy. The only question was whether or not Donald Trump was going to get above 50%, which has never happened before in a Republican caucus in Iowa, and who's going to be number two. So we had a couple of surprises. I've never seen anybody sweep all 99 counties. That appears to be the case. There's a term in Iowa called the full grassy, referring to the senator who visited all 99 counties and prides himself on doing that. So the line is, if you're serious about running, you need to do the full grassy, which is to go to all 99 counties. In fact, Vivek said he did a double grassy, went to all 99 counties twice. We need another term. When you win all 99 counties, what do you call that? A mega grassy? I don't know.
We're going to call it a full trumpito.
All 99 counties. And the other thing is, Vivek got around 8% or so, Rich. So the question is, where will that 8% go? They won't go to Haley. They won't go to Ron DeSantis because, remember, Vivek's theme was, I'm Donald Trump with fresh legs. I'm a mega guy with fresh legs. So that 8% is going to go to Donald Trump, which will help him in New Hampshire. The question is, if Ron DeSantis is number two, which appears to be the case, that means he's overperformed in terms of expectations, and Nikki Haley has underperformed in terms of expectations. So those two people are still going to be in the race, but some of the momentum that Nikki Haley thought she was going to get, I don't think it's going to be there. And I think part of it, Rich, is this. I don't know if you watched the debate between Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, but I did. And there was a poll in the Daily Mail. Of those who watched it, and it's questionable how many people watched it, but of those who watched it, they thought that DeSantis beat her pretty badly by almost 20 points. And so if some people saw that, I think that hurt her in ways that a lot of the analysts were not looking at.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I think I'm looking at DeSantis in his speech tonight, and obviously when you have a win, and I don't know if he expected to win in second place tonight, but he definitely had a fresh pep in his step from what I could see. And he is a solid conservative. You know, if he were running against, like you, right? If he wasn't running against Trump, he would have done so much better because very, very solid candidate. I think just not solid enough to go head to head with Trump. At least that's what the outcome of tonight's caucuses reveal. I expect that to be the case in New Hampshire and South Carolina as well, but I could be wrong. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. I think he did have a pep in his step when he spoke tonight because he finished second, apparently, and most of the pundits thought he was going to finish third, so he's exceeded expectations. But, you know, I spoke with him briefly, and you're right. I mean, on paper, what's not to like about Ron DeSantis? He's good-looking, he's young, gorgeous wife, a cancer survivor, 2 young kids. He's a decorated military vet. He won his re-election in Florida by 20 points. He took Miami-Dade for crying out loud. He took on Disney. What's not to like? There's a guy there, however, the 10,000-pound elephant in the room who's dripping with charisma and has a hold on this party unlike any I've ever seen, including Ronald Reagan, and that guy is named Donald J. Trump. Any other normal year, somebody like DeSantis would have done quite well.
He would have been a rock star.
Down the road, he will. And he's still young, Yeah,
I agree with you. He would have been a rock star at any other time. And it makes me think, was it a miscalculation or was he just saying, look, I'm going to put my name out there. Since I'm young, I could do it again later. I want to be in the running for 2028. I don't know. That might have been the strategy, maybe not. I think for some, they might have been like, they made sour on him because he went against Trump. I don't hold anything against him. I think he's a solid guy, and he's put his best foot forward. Just hard to put your best foot forward against, you know, if you're a radio guy, right? Let's just say, I don't know, Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, somebody like that, you know. I'm not going to get into a pissing match with either of those titans because, you know, they earned their spot, and I'm the new guy in the game. So I think sometimes, you know, that type of thing plays a role. What say you?
Well, Rich, I think that a lot of the candidates underestimated the notion that, as Nikki Haley says, chaos follows Donald Trump. They thought that as this campaign evolved, as the indictments came in, as the accusations came in, that people would go, I've had it. I've had it with all the drama. It had the opposite effect. The more they piled up on Trump, the more people felt that this guy is being persecuted just because of who and what he is, as opposed to any legitimate legal reason to do this. And so it just made him even stronger. I think most of the candidates underestimated that. And I think Ron DeSantis did as well. And plus, Rich, when you got all these consultants breathing in your ear, telling you you're the guy, because you get paid to do that,
just to say that.
It can alter your point of view. And also, you never know whether or not the stars are going to align. He won by 20 points in Florida. He was the fair-haired boy for a little while. You never know whether or not these kinds of events are going to come down the road on you again. I remember when Barack Obama was touted to run, he just barely knew where the bathroom was after getting elected to the U.S. Senate. Hillary was the odds-on favorite to win, but so many people came up to him and said, "Now's the time, now's the time, now's the time." And you never know whether or not 4 years, 8 years, 12 years down the road, you're going to have that same kind of opportunity. So I don't have any problem with DeSantis running. He just underestimated the mammoth, the Goliath he was running up against.
Yeah, true words. Folks, we're on with Larry Elder, former radio show host, 2024 Republican presidential candidate, and the author of As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. I recommend you buy 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. We're coming right back with Larry Elder. I want to get his thoughts on the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, as he oftentimes talks about fatherlessness, and that's a problem that hasn't gone anywhere. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we're moments away from Open Phone America, where you get to call in and sound off on everything under the sun. But I want to wrap up with my man, Larry Elder. He's doing a phenomenal job with everything he's talking about. Larry Elder, in the minutes we have remaining, I want to get your take on the departure from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. And I want to make sure everybody has a chance to buy your book. So let them know the best place to get it.
Best place to get the book, As Goes California, is go to Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. Regarding MLK, you're absolutely right. His vision, as you know, was for people to be evaluated based on content of character, not color of the skin. We've gone exactly the opposite in that direction. 1964, shortly after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, he gave a speech, gave an interview on television, and he said, "Things have changed so rapidly for the good in America. Why, in about 40 years' time, we could have a black president." Which he didn't say in 40 years' time we'll have black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and we have. He didn't say in 40 years' time there'll be black presidents of Ivy League universities, and Claudine Gay was not the first one. He didn't say in 40 years' time the mayors of the 3 biggest cities in America, L.A., Chicago, New York, will be black, and they are. He didn't say we're going to have black senators, black governors, a black coach of Notre Dame, arguably the most storied college football program in America. He said president, meaning once that happens, we can now say, to the fullest extent it's realistic, people are being evaluated based on content of character versus color of skin. For 8 years, Obama played the race card, made things worse.
Larry Elder, got to leave it there. I love you, brother. Thank you. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Love you too. God bless.
All right, folks. Open Phone America is coming up next. 833-4-VALDEZ. Get your calls in. Lots to talk about tonight. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. Special coverage of the Iowa caucuses and commemorating the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Today's the 95th anniversary of MLK's birthday, and quite a mark he's left on American history, in my opinion. And it's sad to see that we've made a departure from so much of what he's taught about focusing on the content of one's character, not the color of their skin. Moreover, he talked about living in something he described as the beloved community, where people treated each other as beloved, right, with love. And that's sadly just not the case today. We've really seen a real departure from that. And I can honestly say I don't know that we were any closer back in the days when he was alive. But I think we did make it a little bit closer after his death, and we've kind of, did an about face on that now, and we're probably more ruthless now than we have been in recent years. But I don't want to be too hyperbolic about that. But I do want to talk about the life and legacy of Dr. King. We had some excellent conversations tonight. If you missed any portion of them, go check them out at Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com, Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. And I want to just recap a little bit about what's going on in the Iowa caucuses. If you're just tuning in, and some of our affiliates that are across the country, they only carry the third hour, welcome to the program. And yes, Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente, Donald J. Trump, has come in first place in the Iowa caucuses, winning a historic victory, a huge win, a win that I think a lot of people didn't see coming. I know I expected him to come in first place, but I did not think he was going to take 51%. I didn't know the number was going to be that high. In fact, we were talking with his pollster, John McLaughlin, about an hour or two ago, and he was saying how the biggest record to date was 12%. Candidate Bob Dole had gotten that in 1988, and that was the record, the highest percentage in a Republican Iowa caucus. And voila, here's El Trompito coming through with 51%, according to the the New York Times. And they called it for him, I think, at 4% of the votes in. He had enough votes by the standard of which many networks said, you know what, we're going to call it as the projected winner being Donald Trump, because he's head and shoulders above the rest of the crowd. So a truly historic blowout landslide victory in the Iowa caucus for Donald Trump. And some other news, big news, right? I think this was a big surprise. I think a lot of people were expecting Haley to come in second place, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, but in fact she didn't. She came in third. Who came in second? Of course, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis coming in second place, very energized with lots of vigor. He gave his second place victory speech as if he'd won the presidency. I love the energy that he brought to the table. It was really interesting. And somebody else who always brings a remarkable amount of energy, and I've had him on this program. I've given him the toughest questions that I could come up with because I think he's a really smooth talker. And I like a lot of what he's saying. Don't agree with everything all the time, but I think he's a fantastic communicator, Vivek Ramaswamy. And Vivek came out there in fourth place, getting 8% of the vote and suspending his campaign. Now, we have some audio from El Trompito and from Vivek, and we have some others that we'll play for you a little bit later in the evening. But I want to start off with some audio of Trump greeting the crowd and thanking his supporters and talking about unifying the country.
What a turnout, what a crowd. And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. It's practically never been like this. It's just so important, and I want to make that a very big part of our message. We're going to come together. It's going to happen soon, too. It's going to happen soon. I want to thank some of the great people. We have so many senators, and I go through every name. We'll be here all night, and everybody's going to get angry at me. But the senators, the congressmen from Washington, they came down from all different states. I want to thank you very much. I want to congratulate Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. We're all having a good time together. And I think they both actually did very well. I really do. I think they both did very well. We don't even know what the outcome of second place is. And I see Carrie Lake. Congratulations, Carrie. I spotted her, I have to announce, because she's terrific. Going to be a senator, a great senator, I predict, right? Going to be a great senator. And I also want to congratulate Vivek, because he did a hell of a job. He came from zero, and he's got a big percent, probably 8%, almost 8%, and that's an amazing job. They all did. They're all very smart people, very capable people. I think most importantly, I want to thank my incredible wife, First Lady.
And of course, President Trump thanks his wife, former First Lady Melania Trump, and gives some remarks about the passing of her mother. God rest her soul. And I thought it was a great, very presidential speech, right? People always say, oh, he's not presidential. I think he was incredibly gracious when he said we should be unifying the country. He thanked all of his opponents in a very cheerful demeanor and a nice manner. And Trump seems to be killing it right now. He is crushing it. Good for El Trompito. Vivek Ramaswamy had some big news that he announced that he's pulling out of the race. Listen to this.
As I've said since the beginning, there are two America First candidates in this race. And earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulate him on his victory. And now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency. And I think we're going to do the right thing for this country.
So that's Vivek Ramaswamy throwing all of his support behind Donald Trump for the 2024 race. And, of course, Nikki Haley giving her words, and she's not going anywhere for now. Ron DeSantis, like I said, coming through as if he had a new pair of shoes with a lot of swag. And we'll get you that audio in a little bit as we come back. But I want to invite you to call in. I know there's a few people hanging on. We've got calls from across the country, Ohio, North Carolina, as well as New York, and more to come. West Coast, where are you at? Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. And as I mentioned earlier, your calls are welcome. We're about to get to you in a moment. But I wanted you to hear from Ron DeSantis, who came in second tonight, and he gave his victory speech, citing the Band of Brothers and the sacred fire of liberty. Listen to this.
That was on the beaches of Normandy in 1944 when our Band of Brothers stormed those shores and helped free the world. The same sacred fire of liberty that was at the Berlin Wall in 1987 when Ronald Reagan stood there and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." This is our responsibility, to carry this torch and to preserve this sacred fire of liberty. Don't run away from this responsibility. We welcome this responsibility. We thank you for your effort. We thank you for your support. You helped us get a ticket punched out of the Hawkeye State. We have a lot of work to do, but I can tell you this, as the next president of the United States, I am going to get the job done for this country. I am not. I am not going to make any excuses, and I guarantee you this, I will not let you down. Thank you all. God bless you.
That's Governor Ron DeSantis. Governor Ron DeSantis giving his, again, victory speech, coming in second place behind Donald Trump, who came in a whopping first place with 51% of the vote. DeSantis, I think, is around 20% of the vote, maybe 21%. I haven't looked at the numbers in about 40 minutes. But either way, he wasn't expected to come in second place, right? I think people were counting him out, and Iowa was always a place to get noticed and to keep it a competitive race. So Trump, again, historic victory, blowout. DeSantis with an upset, coming in ahead of Nikki Haley, who had been kind of ahead of him in many polls in recent weeks. So that was not something I think a lot of people saw coming. And I want to get your reactions from everything we've been talking about tonight, whether it's the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, the Iowa caucuses, and everything else we've talked about with our guest this evening. Let's hit the phones. Let's go to John Matt. Matt in Morehead City, North Carolina, listening on WKKF. Matt, go right ahead.
Hey, hello, Rich. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
My important point is this, Rich. I couldn't be happier that Trump won the Iowa than anybody. There's no money to donate. I tried to donate to the IRA. Guess what? I called them back and said, did Donald Trump get my money? It's the last election. They said, we don't know. I said, well, I donated $25. Now you got to send me $25 worth of Trump stickers. Guess what? They did.
Oh, nice.
But earlier, well, they still don't know if Trump got my money, so I guess I got it back in the stickers. Here's the important point. Earlier, there's a national radio host, we mentioned him. I'll give you a hint. He worked for Donald Trump in the White House. He said, is Trump going to win, do you think, by 30, 40, 50 more points? So I said to him, at least 30. And he'll never sue me for saying this. He put it on national radio. But, so happy he won by 51 points. Heard it at the 9 o'clock news break. I had to call you. I'm listening to your show anyway. And we add to that fact, my friend down the street, who's a Vietnam vet, 80 years old, he said, look, I'm on hold. I got on the radio. Turn on the talk station. I said, I'm turning it on right now. I can be happier than Trump won either. Yeah. In addition, I have thousands of personal friends. I asked them who they vote for. They said, Matt, you don't have to ask me that. You know who I voted for. You're insulting me. I won't ask you again. I go, good. And millions of radio listeners. I never heard one that voted for Joe Biden. And one more thing for humor at the end. There's two different. There can be idiot that's not a Democrat, but a Democrat's an idiot by definition. Why? Because Joe Biden's destroying this country. The only way to save it is Donald Trump. What do you say, you, Rich?
Thank you, Matt. Well, listen, I think Trump is obviously the best candidate out there to bring America back to where we were when he was in office. And I think that's a big part of how we start winning again, is getting back to the pre-COVID spending levels, getting back to kind of like life pre-COVID, right? I saw a funny social media post the other day that said, I really missed the days where I could scroll through my screen and read a bunch of mean tweets from Donald Trump and haggle over whether I was going to pay 2.5% or 2.25% for my next mortgage. And of course, no more wars, no new wars. And I thought, what an accurate depiction of life, right? While, of course, they're cherry-picking things, granted, none of those things are available today, right? We don't get to see the mean tweets anymore. We don't get to debate over how low interest rates are going to be on mortgages. And of course, there's plenty of new conflicts going on with the United States now, getting into Yemen and another U.S. ship being hit today. So U.S. ownership. I got to tell you, all of those things, I think most people are looking at that and they're saying, we miss Trump. And earlier we were on with John McLaughlin, and he mentioned, his heritage from the Bronx and whatever. And we were talking about a TV show that we did on Newsmax TV not too long ago, where a friend and colleague of ours, Cara Castronova, was doing a man on the street interview on Fordham Road in the Bronx and interviewed a bunch of people. And I played that audio on this program a couple of times. But the moral of it, the story, right, the gist of it is that she interviews a handful of people, and every last one of them is a black or Hispanic person in the Bronx, Fordham Road, in New York City. And all of a sudden, not a single one of them says that they support Biden, when this is a 87% Democrat-leaning district in the Bronx. So I think that's pretty remarkable to see that these people were saying, bring back Trump, Joe Biden sucks, F Joe Biden. I mean, really just really eye-opening to see the response. One woman said, no. Bring back Trump because I'm paying about $500 every time I go to the supermarket. And, that's not acceptable. So I think that was pretty eye-opening to see that was happening. And there's talk about Trump doing a rally in the Bronx, potentially in Yankee Stadium. I mean, these are just things I'd never seen in my lifetime. President Reagan launching his campaign in Jersey City, New Jersey, with the Statue of Liberty, almost like a stone's throw away over his shoulder. That was pretty cool and very unique and really big. But Trump doing a rally in New York City, in the Bronx, at Yankee Stadium would just be iconic, right? It would be so historic. But we'll see if that actually happens. I want to get to the rest of your calls. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Matt on WTKF. Near Morehead City, North Carolina, about 80 miles north of Morehead City, if I'm not mistaken. Matt, I appreciate your call. And straight ahead, we're going to get to a couple of more calls. We got calls from Iowa. We're going to get some reaction from people on the ground in Iowa, as well as Ohio and New York. And we're going to do that momentarily. Not enough time for me to go to somebody right now, but definitely enough time to remind you that we are also discussing the legacy, the life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And something that's interesting about MLK Day, you may or may not know. Back in 2011, and we came through in 2012, but I had joined a group of about 5 other folks. One guy was the mayor of Cranford, New Jersey. Another, our consultant on this project was the former not Secretary of Education, but Commissioner of Education in the state of New Jersey, Brett Schundler, and a few other people, the head of the gasoline convenience store lobby, and a number of other people, again, a handful of other people, because there's only 5 of us in the beginning. But we started a charter school in Jersey City, New Jersey, called the Beloved Community Charter School. And the idea of the Beloved Community and the namesake of this school comes from a philosophy that was preached by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So I'm going to talk about that when we come back as well. And, of course, your calls. So don't go anywhere. If you're on hold, we're coming your way momentarily. If you're trying to get in, just keep trying. There will be an open line momentarily. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ is the number. Of course, I'm going to check out your comments on social media as well. At Rich Valdez with an S. Don't go anywhere. 833-4-VALDEZ. I am Rich Valdez, and we're coming right back.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez. We're live, as we are every evening, on stations from one side of this country to the other. And the phone number, if you want to join us, is 833-4-VALDEZ. I'm going to get to your calls momentarily, but we're talking about the Iowa caucuses and other things that we discussed with our guest tonight, the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And I was, before the break, I was sharing about the charter school that I had the privilege of being a founder of. And it's called the Beloved Community Charter School. It's in Jersey City, New Jersey. And the idea of the Beloved Community is something I just want to share with you quickly. And this is an excerpt from Martin Luther King's family's website, thekingcenter.org. The beloved community is a term that was first coined in the early days of the 20th century by philosopher and theologian Josiah Royce. He founded the Fellowship of Reconciliation. However, it was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., who was also a member of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, who popularized the term and invested it with a deeper meaning, which has captured the imagination and goodwill of people all over the world. Now, for Dr. King, the beloved community was not a lofty utopian goal to be confused with the rapturous image of the peaceable kingdom, in which lions and lambs coexist in idyllic harmony. Rather, the beloved community was for him a realistic, achievable goal that could be attained by a critical mass of people committed and trained to the philosophy and methods of nonviolence. Peace, in other words, right? Now, Dr. King's beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, I know some of this sounds kind of collectivist, but stay with me. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. In the beloved community, international disputes are resolved by peaceful conflict resolution and reconciliation of adversaries instead of military power. Love and trust will triumph over fear and hatred. Peace and justice will prevail over war and military conflict. Dr. King's beloved community was not devoid of interpersonal group or international conflict. Instead, he recognized that conflict was an inevitable part of the human experience, but he believed that conflicts could be resolved peacefully and adversaries could be reconciled through mutual and determined commitment to nonviolence. No conflict, he believed, needed to erupt in violence. All conflicts in the beloved community should end with reconciliation of adversaries cooperating together in a spirit of friendship and goodwill. Right? And ultimately, King believed that it's reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It's this spirit and this love that can transform opponents into friends. It's this type of understanding goodwill that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of a new age. It's this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of men. That's a quote from King. And while, listen, I don't believe a lot of that stuff's achievable, he did. And it was a basis for something that I think, while I may not agree with all of it, I don't like international standards and all these things, I do agree that they're universal truths, kind of like the Ten Commandments, right? That's an international standard I can live with. You know, don't murder, don't steal, right? These are universal truths. And I think a lot of this love your neighbor idea is a universal truth. We should. I know there's always somebody out there saying, but what if your neighbor's this? What if your neighbor wants that? What if you're, all right, what if? But I think the what ifs are few and far between. And the majority of people do want to do the right thing. And it's that part of King's message where I chew the meat and spit out the bones that I really, I feel was great, right? And I gravitate towards that. And I feel that we've kind of lost a lot of that today. So I want to get your opinions and thoughts on this. Our phone number again, 833-482-5337. Let's go to the middle of the country to Ohio, Lorain, Ohio, to be exact. Let's check in with John. He's listening to KDKA. John, go right ahead.
Yes, I think there's some things that have been really deliberately deprived of about Martin MLK's powerful vision, and it's contained in a speech that he gave in Harlem called MLK's Beyond Vietnam speech, and it was a powerful condemnation of the U.S. carpet bombing of Vietnam the ruination of our economy by spending hundreds of billions of dollars for militarism and war. He said that this is a direct robbing of the poor and needy in our country. He condemned the United States alliances with some of the most right-wing fascist regimes of the wealthy around the world in supporting them and arming them. And this is in a speech that's in print and on tape, but we never hear it. It's totally blocked by all of the corporate establishment media in this country.
Yeah. Well, I'll share something with you, John. What's interesting is that the reason I haven't played any audio from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, not even I Have a Dream, you'll notice a lot of radio stations are not playing any of these things, and the audio is available, is because it's copyright protected. And every year, the King Center literally has their lawyers send out cease and desist letters so that any excerpts of these speeches are not used. So that's the reason I can tell you that we are not using any of those clips from any of these speeches. But I've got the transcript of the speech you're talking about in front of me. And yeah, King was a real social justice warrior in many ways, right? He really spoke about, he was very anti-war. He was against the military-industrial complex. And today there are still people like that. You got people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's very much into that. Bernie Sanders. I'm a little bit of a war hawk, if I'm being honest. I don't want to see war, but I realize that it's important to carry that big stick and to do so quietly, but to carry it nonetheless. That I think is important for our country and to maintain our strategic position. I think when you are quiet and don't get involved in any type of international conflict, you lose your position of leadership, and I think we're witnessing that with Joe Biden, and that's why we're seeing so much unrest in the world, because they now realize, hey, look, if the United States isn't going to get involved, then we can go ahead and shoot ships and do what we want with anybody we want, whether it's the Strait of Hormuz or the Red Sea or the South China Sea or anywhere else we're seeing conflict, with Russia and Ukraine, Hamas and Israel, the constant saber rattling with Taiwan. We see this stuff all over the place. What's going on in Yemen, and Iran constantly provoking us with their aggression. So, yeah, I'm with you. And I appreciate you bringing this to the table, because this is a very anti-war speech, April 4th, 1967. And as you accurately pointed out, it's called Beyond Vietnam. The transcript's available online. And he was clear. He says that war's deleterious effects on both America's poor and Vietnamese peasants. And he insisted that it was morally imperative for the United States to take radical steps to stop the war through nonviolent means. And I can tell you, look, I'm not looking for war for anybody, with anybody. But I do realize, at least I believe, it's my belief, that sometimes it's inevitable. Sometimes you've got to fight. And that's just how it goes. John from Lorain, Ohio, thank you for your call. I appreciate you listening on KDKA. We're going to continue with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You can't do it unless you have a faith. And God is so good.
Of course, that's Nikki Haley giving her victory speech, thanking all of the members of her family and her staff and Iowans for voting her in number 3, third place. And quick aside, the other day somebody sent me a message on Facebook, and I don't get a chance to get back to everybody, but they were saying, would you even consider having Nikki Haley on the show? I'm pretty sure I've had Nikki Haley on this show before, and if I didn't, I've had her on a different show. But I like Nikki Haley. I think she's a nice person. I may not agree with all of her positions in this particular race, but what I can say is every candidate has been given an opportunity to come on this show. Some have accepted, some have not, and I'm not egotistical in any way. That's a lie. I am, but not with this in this particular regard. If the Haley people called tomorrow, the DeSantis people, anybody else who hasn't had a chance to come on, go right ahead. We're here. The people want to hear from you. We've had. I think we had Ryan Blinkley on this show, or Binkley. We've had Perry Johnson. Some of the candidates who never made the debate stage. We've also had Donald Trump and Larry Elder and Vivek Ramaswamy. So there's no discrimination here. Big campaign, small campaign, whomever you are, you want to come on this program and talk to the listeners, estimated around 5.5 million, go right ahead. It's my honor to have you. I'd love to have the conversation with you. But for any listeners who are out there thinking that I'm cherry picking any of the people running in the Republican primary, I'm not. I'm happy to talk to them. It's kind of what we do here, right? Just like people that disagree with me get to the first spot to call in. Same way. I'm happy to talk with any of these candidates. So that was just a quick aside. And Mike Huckabee was giving some commentary on Newsmax TV earlier, giving his reaction to Donald Trump winning this historic victory. Listen to this.
Well, it's pretty shocking. I mean, within a few minutes, everybody was sort of saying it's over. Donald Trump is going to win. It's not just that he won, but he has won with a margin that is unlike any in the history of the Iowa caucuses. Nobody has ever won with a greater advantage than 12%. Donald Trump is going to end up not only having more numbers than all of the other people put together, but if you take everything that you've been watching in Iowa, people kept talking about it's going to be close. DeSantis is going to be a close second. As it's turned out, none of that happened. This has been a blowout.
That's former Governor Mike Huckabee, who also ran for president in Iowa and won. And that is the music. A little early, I'd say. Now, let's go to the calls. Steve from Keokuk, Iowa. WCEZ. Steve, you're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, Rich. I love your show. Watch it all the time, or listen to it all the time.
Thank you, sir.
My comment is about Donald Trump. I totally agree. He's our best candidate, and he has a real obligation to this country to fix the big problem that he caused unintentionally.
What's that?
And what that is, well, if you look into your history books in Europe and in Asia or anywhere, in any landmass where there's been a wall built, what occurs is that wall remains, and then eventually they're invaded from the other side, and then that wall comes down. And the powers to be always falls within the side that invaded first, the side that built the wall. Now, if we look at what's currently happening, Donald Trump might have built the wall, but Joe Biden not only allowed what happened, he sped up. He's rushing him in. Usually what takes years to occur is happen within within 3,
Right. Well, listen, I think you're on to something, Steve. I'll say this. I think that there are a lot of things. I'm a big believer in being a student of history and looking back into history because, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it, right? It's a famous adage. But I will say this. The United States, in my opinion, is unique and remarkable. And the reason it is because while we are one of the youngest countries overall, right? Most countries outdate us by hundreds of years. We're also the oldest constitutional republic, right? And it's an interesting place to be where you're so young yet so experienced because of being a constitutional republic and having lasted as long as we have. Now, I don't know that we can take every lesson in history and compare them to us because we are so unique. I don't think building a wall at the southern border, which is more like a fence in open areas, where it's either desert or it's mostly like desert or just dry area that leads to the Rio Grande. I don't know that is a mistake per se. This is not necessarily like the walls of Jericho, but I get your point. and I think it's a valid one, in that we need to look back and make sure we don't repeat the mistakes that we've seen in history. I also agree that Joe Biden is exacerbating a problem that already existed, and Donald Trump in many ways curtailed, right? He really, we had the safest border in my lifetime, and with the least amount of traffic during the Trump years, and even going into COVID. And it wasn't until Trump was out and Biden was in that we saw this massive influx. And then once Biden was really in, I mean, it's like they've opened up the floodgates, and they're like, no, come one, come all. We're going to make an app for you. We're not going to send anybody anywhere. Matter of fact, when you get here, we're just going to ask you where you want to go. Florida, New York, we'll put you on a bus. We'll get you in. If we can't put you on a bus, we'll put you on a plane that lands in the middle of the night. And we've seen all of it happen. We've seen them shipped to Philly. We've seen these people shipped to Westchester, New York. And we've seen DeSantis send people back out on a bus. We've seen Abbott sending people back out, sending them to New York City, sending them to Martha's Vineyard. So, I mean, we've seen so much happen. I can't agree with Trump creating the immigration problem. I think it was already a problem that he helped to resolve. And Biden's the one that really made it worse than it was. We've seen record highs, something like 10, 11,000 people a day, in unheard of numbers. So all that being said, Biden is a disaster. Biden's policies are a disaster. Mayorkas is an absolute failure. And these guys, you know, depending on who you talk to, some people might say they're traitors. This is treason to this country. They're participating and supporting an invasion into the United States. The Texas National Guard's been activated under that premise, where they're saying that they're being invaded and that the federal government is failing to protect them during an invasion, and that's why they're using the National Guard. We'll see how that ends up. I have a feeling they'll probably lose that one. But if they do win, that would probably fix our immigration problem. Either way, Steve, thank you for the call. Big shout out to you in Iowa, WCEZ. Coming right back to the rest of your calls and more. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It's the speed round. Let's go to Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Check in with my guy, Paul. Go right ahead.
Okay, good evening, Rich. Yeah, Rich, I seen you on Wendy Bell this past weekend on Newsmax, and the host of Eat, Drink, and Smoke asked you about your watch on the one arm. Well, you showed him your watch, and then you shot up your tat. Okay,
you know, I confused my arms. I usually wear my watch on my left hand, like most people, but I had it on my right hand because I'd just gotten some of that ink. And that was what it was. And it gave me a chance to show off the new ink. It was the Statue of Liberty with a big microphone and headphones behind it and the American flag in the background. Why not, right?
Yes, sir. And I seen the collar in it, but I just caught a real quick glimpse of it because it was quick. But, you know, I just love what happened for Trump tonight. I hope this is like a prerequisite for maybe what may come in the future here. And congratulations to Donald Trump.
Oh, thank you, Paul. And thanks for your kind words on my my body art and my watch. And I'll post a video of that from Newsmax over the weekend on my social media. Paul, big shout out to you and WHIZ. Let's see. Do we have time? We're going to squeeze it in. Jane, you got less than 30 seconds. Go right ahead.
I know. Okay, last week before you signed off, there was a horrible man who went on with you, and he was one of the rudest people. And you sounded concerned after you had to talk to him. Please know you are the best out there, and do not doubt yourself, okay?
Oh, thank you. I don't remember that interaction. I can't believe that didn't happen, but we'll talk more about it, and I'll try and find it to refresh my memory. Thank you, America. God bless you. Hasta mañana. Don't go anywhere.